the 49ers lost to the Seattle Seahawks today. And I mean, it was an upset because I really felt like the 49ers, I mean, they were favored in this game and it was a pretty good matchup for them, especially given that the Seahawks starting center retired right, like leading up to the game, like a couple days before the game. And it's like, well, he didn't want to get his ass kicked by the Niners, clearly he didn't want to be out there. And so, I mean, I don't know like what the real reason is. Maybe it's like injuries. I don't really follow that Seahawks center very much, but the 49ers went out and they just played poorly. They didn't execute very well. There were multiple points in this game where the 49ers really, I mean, it was a close game when it didn't need to be. And then, they say when you let a bad team hang around for long enough, they'll beat you. And that's exactly what happened today. And this is now the third time this season against each, it's happened once against each divisional opponent where the 49ers blow a fourth quarter lead against, they've done it with the Cardinals. They've done it against the Rams. Now they've done it against the Seahawks. And, really what they all have in common is the 49ers just played themselves. It's bad game management, bad play calling, and just poor execution. I think, I'm gonna just sort of like, I'm gonna cut to like maybe the end of the game, whereas normally I'll go through like, maybe quarter by quarter or just sort of like kind of go how the game went. But, late in the game, the 49ers had the opportunity to, bleed the clock. And then again, Kyle Shanahan calling pass plays. And one of them was actually a good play, but it was an overthrow by Brock Purdy, to Deebo Samuel over the middle. And, the 49ers didn't convert, and then the clock is not ticking. You're giving the Seahawks life. That's the risk you run every time you throw the ball when it's time to manage the clock. Like, I get it. You're trying to win, you're coaching to not try to lose, or you don't want to be coaching to not try to lose. You want to be coaching to win the game. But come on, you have Christian McCaffrey back now. And I mean, we'll talk about McCaffrey in a second, because McCaffrey hasn't been like, the same CMC that we're sort of used to. And, Jordan Mason still looks really good, and he was severely underutilized in this game. But, the 49ers just needed guys to step up. George Kittle didn't play in this game. And the only guy who really stepped up in this game, I felt like was Juwan Jennings. Juwan Jennings is the 49ers' best wide receiver this season. It's not even close. Deebo is not close to as good as Juwan Jennings. Not this year. In the past, hell yeah. This year, no. Brandon Ayuk also got overshadowed by Juwan Jennings this year. When Jennings has been healthy, he has been balling out. And Jennings is arguably the only reason why the 49ers even scored points on offense today. He was there. He came up big on third downs. There was one play where Jennings had to like overcome 4 Seahawks defenders, in order to get a first down. And you're thinking, man, Jennings is putting the team on his back and the 49ers are going to win this game. But no, they didn't. And, you just start to wonder. The 49ers are now 5-5. They are at the bottom of the NFC West. They're tied with 2 other teams in the division. And the Cardinals right now, I think they have a very favorable schedule, the rest of the way. The 49ers are still technically, I think, 1 game back of, first place in their division. But they're also, along with them are the other teams who are tied. And the 49ers have a tough schedule coming up. They have a very rough road trip coming up, and maybe I'm jumping too far ahead because we'll definitely preview next week. But, a lot of fans are asking, is it time for Kyle Shanahan to be fired? And I think right this second, no. And honestly, maybe even after this season, I still don't know if it's time to do it. I think the times to do it, there have been times in the past where you could justify firing Kyle Shanahan. The whole, the Trey Lance thing, how many times that he's blown it in the Super Bowl when it's, the ball's in his court. All he has to do is close the game, and he just refuses to learn. I get it. You're not going to fire a coach coming off a Super Bowl. I don't think right now is the time to fire him, but I do see the fatigue. I get it because I'm a Niner fan. There is fatigue of, like, there was this very interesting, sort of tweet that Nick Newman tweeted. If you follow Nick Newman, you know exactly who I'm talking about. But if not, go follow him on Twitter. Just look him up. He's a Niner. He's a Niner, I guess. Person on Twitter. I don't know if he still does any YouTube. I probably should know. But Nick sort of, I'll just bring up the tweet, actually. Let me bring it up so that way I quote it correctly. Let's see here. I'll even give him a follow on the Silver and Gold Twitter. Follow the Silver and Gold Twitter if you have a second to do so. But Nick Newman says, it seems like ever since Jim Harbaugh left, 99.9% of 49er fans have been rooting for his success. I definitely have. I just had this thought. If Kyle were to leave, what percentage of the fan base would root for his success outside of the organization? My guess is a very small amount. What do you think, Mike?
He's probably not wrong on the second part. I couldn't tell you on the first part. Obviously, your personal experience is you very much enjoyed Jim Harbaugh. And, I remember the Jim Harbaugh years, and he was a very good, like, the difference between the two of them is that Jim Harbaugh is personable. I think I said that right. Whereas Kyle Shanahan is not, right? Mm-hmm. Kyle Shanahan is very much, the guy holding the clipboard, not very. He's just he doesn't put much emotion into things unless he's getting upset with reporters asking him the wrong questions or something, right? Otherwise, like, he's not really the type to, be this emotional figure for the team, like almost like for lack of a better term, like a father figure. Like, that's Jim Harbaugh, right?
I mean, yeah. I guess what I think you're trying to say is that he's not like he's not a leader, whereas Harbaugh is a leader. And maybe you would word it a little bit differently.
Yeah, that's a little steep. I would say it's like, it's just a matter of how you handle being a leader, Like, there are different ways to do it, whereas, maybe the Shanahan, I feel like Kyle Shanahan's dad was, I don't remember because he's from a little before my time, but if I had to guess, him being as successful as he probably was. I think anybody would agree he's a better coach than his son, But that's a different era of football. I feel like in today's football, at least, I can see where the Kyle Shanahans make sense to some teams of, like, just be a good offense and be efficient and all that, and kind of, be very, internet versus, pencil and paper. You know what I mean? Like, that old school. Like, I remember a long time ago on this podcast, we talked about, I don't know if it was John Madden and Bill Walsh, but, like, they were teachers. They taught the game, whereas some of these coaches nowadays, like, it's like you're one or the other. You're either an Antonio Pierce, who's like a rah, maybe a motivator, whatever you want to call him, right? Like, he's good at getting the guys motivated, or at least he was last year. And then you have the Kyle Shanahans, who's just the total clipboard carrying, this is the offense, this is how we're going to execute it. But there's no emotion, there's no rah to him, Whereas those coaches back in the day, they had both. And Jim Harbaugh is one of those guys that he has both.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. So, like, even the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, I feel like is very different from him because when I see, I mean, and this is my point of view because I watch like I watch every Niner game, and I see Kyle Shanahan. A player gets injured. Kyle Shanahan is doesn't go up to the player. Doesn't it almost seems like he could care less. It's his face is just buried in the clipboard, and I feel like I mean, have a little bit of, sensibility, have be I don't know if like I guess it's just me wanting him to be something that he's not. And I think like
Right.
I definitely have in my mind what a head coach should be. And I mean, his style just doesn't fit like my preference.
Right.
And so I sort of laid it down here. If you've already gotten a head start to read what I said, I'll just paraphrase it. But like, essentially, I really feel like there's a difference between, how fans feel or felt about Jim Harbaugh, how Niner fans felt about Jim Harbaugh versus how they feel about Kyle Shanahan. Because really, Jim Harbaugh, I feel like you could take the winning away from Jim Harbaugh and you could still really relate to his personality, just his love for the game, how passionate he is, how fired up he gets, just sort of like how he fires up the fan base. And Kyle Shanahan, it's like if you take the winning away from Kyle Shanahan, you really like he's just kind of a boring guy, you know? And I think that goes a long way with fans. Fans want to be able to relate to the coach. Like if Shanahan was not winning, he would have been long gone, you know? And right now, I mean, his team is 5-5. The season is in the brinks, like it's hanging by a thread right now because there are tough, really tough matchups coming up in the coming weeks, and they need to win football games, you know? So I don't know. Like, is it time to fire him right this second? No. In the offseason, I think like if you have a good replacement for him, just where I'm at as a fan right now, it's like I'm open to something different because every single time it's like, all right, we get this head coach who's just snarky with the media, thinks that he's better than everybody, thinks that he's smarter than everybody and constantly gets out coached in games. And like, okay, Mike Shanahan is your dad. And I get it. Like, you call good plays and this and that, but I think there's more to being a head coach than just being a play caller. And I just don't see him as a great leader of men. And I don't know, you know, um, so
I would say a good example is what we were talking about last week of like comparing the way that he handled the Debo situation to how Andy Reid handled like Travis Kelce a year
yeah.
ago. You know, I think that's a
Hmm.
perfect example of like what you would look for, you know. And Andy
Hmm.
Reid, I mean, the commercials he's done are fucking hilarious, but that's commercials. But, you know, he's genuinely the type of coach that as a fan you like, and I think as a team you want to win for, you know.
Yeah.
Whereas Shanahan, I don't feel that. So, you know, to all that, you know, I get Nick Newman's point for sure, and yours as well.
Hmm. And I mean, even Jordan over here, says, great point. We miss Harbaugh. X's and O's is cool and all, but leader of men cannot be taught. You got it or you don't. Kyle does not. I agree with that. I don't think this is just my personal opinion. Guys in the locker room will probably say differently. But really, I mean, what are they just going to throw their coach under the bus? Clearly,
Right.
guys like Jimmy Ward didn't really care for Kyle Shanahan's, his antics as a head coach, right? But just seeing it from the outside, I'm like, I try to put myself in the position of the players, and like, I mean, how could the little things not go a long way? And I just don't think that Shanahan cares about the little things. And so far, with just being the play calling head coach, it has not worked, you know? And then right now, all right, the 49ers issues are not just Kyle Shanahan is, he's not a leader and that's why they're not winning. No, it's more than that. It's the 49ers are I mean, they're old. You know, they played a lot of football games over the past several years, more than most teams, you know, except for maybe the Kansas City Chiefs. The 49ers have, you know, been able to hold together this core of players, and, you know, it just gets hard. You know, they've been nearly, you know, nearly Super Bowl champions since 2019, and they haven't gotten it done. And at the end of the day, I mean, Father Time catches up to everybody. You know what I mean? That's why they call it Super Bowl windows. And it looks like right now the 49ers missed the Super Bowl window with the core that they started building since 2017. That's what it looks like right now. For all I know, they will make me look stupid. Everybody will clip this and like, man, Niner fans have lost their mind, blah, blah, blah. Niners end up winning the division, going to the Super Bowl, and hell, maybe even win it this time. They just seemed like a middle of the pack team to me this year, you know? And maybe that's how it felt in the past, right before they went on their runs, you know, because a couple of years ago they were like 3-5 and then went to the NFC title game. They're a team that can just out of nowhere just catch lightning in a bottle, and then all right, this guy gets injured there, and then all of a sudden they win this game that they're not supposed to win. I mean, it could happen. But I don't know. I think it gets harder and harder the further you progress into these players' careers. And, you know, it just seems very unlikely to me. And I don't know. I want to get to some comments because I do see Fonzie and Rob in here. Fonzie says, "What's up, guys? Season's over for both teams." Melting face emoji. It's not over for the Niners, but it's definitely like it's not looking good, you know, because I think like for the next 2 weeks, you can almost chalk up losses for the Niners. They're going to Green Bay next week. And obviously we'll do our formal prediction of that, you know, not to jump too far ahead. And then in 2 weeks, they're going to play the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. So
yeah, that's a tough one for sure. I will say before we get on to the rest of the comments, I couldn't help but think. I watched the end of this Niners game, and I was sitting there like, once the Niners couldn't convert, and they, I think, punted to the Seahawks with 2.5 minutes left, up 4, I was like, I have no idea what's about to happen, but my God, I should have stuck to my gut and picked the Seahawks. Because I don't know if you remember, but last week I was like, this is a toss-up for me. I think it's going to be a close game, and it really is a toss-up. And you were kind of like, no, the Niners are going to win this game. Like, come on, what are you talking about? And I'm like, I don't know. It's a divisional matchup, man, and anything can happen.
Well, Mike, you don't understand. Kyle Shanahan is a fucking genius, okay? How can I side against a genius? He knows more about football than anyone who's ever lived, okay? Yeah. And if you question it, Mike, if you question it, I'm getting the Niner fan base on you. They will cancel you on Twitter. Okay? They're going to take off your Raider hat, and they're going to stick it where the sun don't shine. Rob Aman. Hey, man. Welcome to the show. Kyle looks mentally checked out. I mean, he does. His players are not executing, you know, whatever he's drawing up. And I think, you know, people can say, well, they just aren't running the plays right. But that's part of being a head coach. It's getting the right players who are going to run your plays. And then not only that, making sure they're prepared to run them during the games. That falls on the head coach. You know, if you're going to blame anybody, you have to blame whoever is responsible for Kyle Shanahan has a big say in who's on the field. It's not just John Lynch. Kyle Shanahan hired John Lynch. You know? Kyle Shanahan handpicked John Lynch to be his general manager. You know? So, I mean, really, if you want to go to the root of the problem, it's the Yorks. The Yorks are the top dog of the list of problems. And then it goes Kyle Shanahan, and then so on and so forth. But, all right, let's see. Rob with a great question. Why did he use Mason and Garendo today? Well, I think why didn't he use Mason and Garendo today? I didn't like CMC being ran into the ground today. My issue with that stems from last year, where the 49ers would be up in these blowout games and they would just, they would just be continuing to use McCaffrey when they had Elijah Mitchell and Jordan Mason, two perfectly capable running backs, to be able to close out games. Jordan Mason, look, his stats today, he got in for 2 plays in a row, 2 carries, 13 yards. That's 6.5 yards per carry. Pretty damn good.
Yep.
And then after that, they just went away from him. Debo had a carry today, -1 yards. Tabor Pepper should have went up and should have told him to lock in. Or Jake Moody should have told him to lock in.
How about that? I mean, God help Debo when he gets fumbled,
Yeah.
When he loses a fumble. Oh, man.
4 receptions, 22 yards.
Yeah.
You want to compare that with what Juwan Jennings did? Juwan Jennings, 10 receptions, 91 yards, and a touchdown. Juwan Jennings was the offense today. What do you want to say, Mike? What do you want to say?
I might have traded Debo Samuel this week in fantasy.
Yeah, you might have. I
might have.
You certainly shook things up. That's for sure. But
sure
hopefully God is watching my back, dude. Because maybe we'll talk about it if we meet up in the playoffs. Maybe we'll do like a bonus topic where we just like preview our fantasy matchup because it'll be kind of cool. I don't know if anybody will want to watch that, because they're here for Niners and Raider content. But
yeah, but back to the Niners though. I 1000% agree with your point of, in the past, Shanahan's offense has seemingly been the most successful when he has a second running back getting big time carries, and just chunking the shit out of the defense.
I disagree. Last year was his best offense. I think Shanahan just does, he wants to use his best running back. He wants to lean on that guy. There was a stat like the first several years he had a different leading rusher, like the first several years that he was here. It was Tevin Coleman like the first year, it was Matt Breida like the second year, and then it was Raheem Mostert, and then it was just all right, he keeps cycling through these guys, and then it was McCaffrey obviously last season. This year, I mean, he was sort of forced to use Jordan Mason. And Jordan Mason so far has been better than Christian McCaffrey. If you took any of Jordan Mason's 2 games and you put it versus McCaffrey's, 2 games this year, I think the eye test will tell you that McCaffrey is opening up stuff in the passing game, but they didn't score a lot of points this game.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it's just a fault in the game plan, but McCaffrey doesn't look like he has the same burst as he did last year. And really, I didn't expect him to because he hasn't really had game preparation or like game speed to really rehearse since early off in the offseason. Well, really, no game speed, ever since last year. No game speed ever since last year. You can't replicate game speed at practice. But just going full out at practice, hasn't had that since the offseason. Rob asks, where were the targets to Pearsall today? I don't know. That is a great question. Pearsall was non-existent. Let's see. Kyle's stubbornness is why Jake Tonjes wasn't even considered today. Let's see. I have the Niners finishing 7-10. I don't know. I think they'll get 9 wins, 8 or 9 wins. I don't know about, but I don't think you're far off. It's kind of a down week. It's very possible. I'm a no. Hold on. I'm not on the fire Kyle Shanahan train, but it is time to bring in an offensive coordinator. I mean, here's the thing. Like, even when Mike McDaniel was the offensive coordinator for the Niners, Shanahan was still calling the plays. So really, like, I mean, I'd love to know exactly what an offensive coordinator would be able to do. Like, I get the point. You know what I mean? You need a guy who is focused on play calling, and then another one who's focused on managing the game and, managing the players during the game. And Shanahan tries to be both. Well, really, I mean, he is both. His job is both. But it looks like every single game, he's always in his play sheet. And he tries to, I mean, he had a couple challenges today that one that he should have won, I think, on the DK Metcalf catch, where they said that he got both feet down. One of the angles, it looked like he didn't get that foot to scrape the grass, before he really got possession of the ball. So I don't know. I just think that it was probably a close call, or Las Vegas called, but I don't know. I think, do you need to bring in an offensive coordinator? Or at a certain point, does Kyle Shanahan just have to be the offensive coordinator and you need to bring in a head coach? I don't know, because that's Kyle Shanahan's best. That's his best attribute is running the offense. That's what I think. Mike Shanahan was great until players started tooting him out. Yeah. Like Mike said, that was before our time, but Mike Shanahan has Super Bowls at least. Jesus M says CMC looks slow, no quickness. Yeah, I mean, he does not look like the CMC that we saw last season. And really, I mean, he just got kind of tossed in there. And it's like, all right, save our season, Christian. You were the offensive player of the year last year, but I mean, he had Achilles tendonitis in both Achilles, At a certain point, does he just get shut down? If the season really starts to slip away, do you even risk it?
Yeah, it's a great question. We'll see.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't take much to rattle Geno, yet D-line couldn't collapse pocket. I mean, there were a couple plays where Geno got sacked late in the game, and then
what happened to Bosa?
Bosa, he's got like that oblique, injury. I think last week he said like his hip was killing him, but now it's more I guess concentrated on the oblique, and at a certain point in the second half, he just like he went to the sideline because you could tell he was clearly in pain after he sacked Geno Smith. And like he was in for like a play or two after he sacked, after his last sack, and then went to the sideline and was like out there for a while. And then the announcer started talking about how Bosa started taking the tape off, so he wasn't coming back. So, yeah, I mean, yeah. Niners defense has to make a stop on the Seahawks last drive. Yeah. I mean, that's another thing too. The Nick Sorensen. I almost said Nick Swartzen. Shows where my head's at. But Nick Sorensen, I mean, they didn't really allow a lot of points to the Seahawks. It's got to be complimentary football. Special teams wasn't even good, earlier in this game. I think it might have been Jordan Mason who fumbled on a return and like batted it out of bounds. I was like, man, the special teams just cannot get it together. At a certain point, you got to fire the special teams coordinator. People want to put the blame on the players, but when it's the entire unit constantly playing bad, I don't know. All signals point to who's in charge. You're not going to fire the whole team.
Right.
Rob says, in a way, season derailing isn't the worst thing. They can use a higher draft pick to address the pass rush. I mean, that's true too. Yeah. Unless, Mike, are the Raiders going to use their draft pick on high-end pass rusher?
I pray that they don't. I'll say this in the Niners, outside looking in sort of mentality. I still fully think like all the Niners need to do is make the 7th seed, and they can still, like, I know the team has not played to this capacity this season, but I still think they can beat anybody. Like, if they just play to their fullest ability, it's just tough because they don't have Ayuk. So it's like, the offense might not quite be there, but in a sort of wishful thinking or, hoping things get better sort of sense, if McCaffrey's playing at 90% of his health and the offensive line gets it together, and I think Purdy's been playing fine. If Debo can pull out some big games and they scheme up Debo to have big games, right? And you use Juwan Jennings more, target him more. I think if the defense plays, up to the standard that we've had in the past, I still think they can beat practically anybody. It's just a matter of getting there.
Yeah, and then Rob, Mike and I are, I think we're both in lockstep that the Raiders are looking to draft a quarterback. I'm just kind of teasing him because look at this guy. Look at that hat. Look at that. Look at that clown hat. No, I'm just kidding. No, but I just like to mess with Mike because that would be like the Raider thing to do, right? Them be in prime position for a quarterback and they take a defensive lineman. Hey, you know who did that? Kyle Shanahan. You know who did? That's the first thing he did as the head coach of the 49ers. Following obviously all the roster moves. His plan A was Kirk Cousins, passed on Patrick Mahomes for Solomon Thomas.
And Deshaun Watson.
Yeah. Although
maybe a couple other guys.
Yeah. Maybe in
I just mean that
Deshaun Watson
hindsight. Thing. Yeah, at the time I was thinking Deshaun Watson was the top quarterback in that class. Yeah. I think most people were, but I think it's just a little too obvious right now for the Raiders. Like they have to draft a quarterback, and I think really the plan was for them with Tom Telesco to draft a quarterback this past draft, but it didn't work out that way. And I have something to say about last year's draft, but I'll spit it out in our Broncos preview.
Mm-hmm.
Hint, hint.
Oh, I think I know where you're going with that.
Yeah, I fucked up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was a little too cocky on draft day.
Yeah. So Rob says, he says, my grandma would be rolling in her grave if she saw how bad the Raiders are. Well, yeah.
Someday I'm going to be in a grave.
Hopefully that doesn't last, forever, or else, maybe the Raiders will still be bad by the time Mike is in his. So.
Yeah, I was literally talking to my dad tonight about the Raiders, and it's been so long since they've won a playoff game that even me reminding him how long it's been, he's like, no, that can't be right. I said, Dad, the last time the Raiders won a playoff game, I was probably still in diapers. I am 27 going on 28 years old right now.
It'd be funny if you said you were 50.
No, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, someday I'm going to be nearly in my grave, and I'm going to think back and go, wow, I really lost 20 years of my life watching the Raiders.
Yeah, no, you're gonna go in your grave and you're gonna go, man, it was really a stupid idea to draft Shedeur Sanders, huh?
Yeah, no, I remember Jamarcus Russell, be good. But man, yeah, we'll see.
Oh man, all right. So going back to the Niners, I don't have much else that I really want to or need to talk about in terms of this game. I feel like we sort of hit on the key areas of, Shanahan just not being able to get his team to play a complete football game. When's the last time the Niners played a complete football game? Even in their wins against the Bucks, it's not a complete game.
I'd have to look back at their. Well, show us the Show us the win losses for us picking games. We can look at them.
Okay. So let's see. Against the Jets, that was a complete game, I'd say.
Yeah, that's definitely
Vikings,
it.
no. Rams, no. Patriots, not exactly. Like,
I don't really remember how that game went. I would say the Jets game.
I'd say the Jets game. Cardinals, no. The Seahawks game got close at the end, so no. Chiefs, no. Cowboys, that's one. I mean, what was the score of that game?
I feel like it was a little closer than expected. Could be wrong.
Yeah. So no.
The point is, since week 1.
Since week 1, they haven't put together a complete game. So yeah, I mean, that's tough. I can put these in the red column because we were both wrong, even though Mike wants to put the blame all on me. It's not fair, but hey, you take it like a champ. So yeah, let's talk about the 49ers versus Packers. Mike, how do you envision that this game is going to go? Because the Niners are going to be traveling to Lambeau Field. It's going to be cold. I don't necessarily know because we're 1 week away from it, like how the weather exactly is going to be, if it's going to rain, if it's going to snow. Because we're getting to the cold seasons now.
Mm-hmm.
And Lambeau is not a place that you want to be having a road game at this time of the year, especially in the next 2 months.
You know what? I think this is another toss-up game for me. I think this is another game where I really think that these teams are actually quite evenly matched to a degree. I think the Packers look much more maybe complete right now. I don't know. I'm just going to go with my gut here. I think the Niners are going to win. I think the Packers just came off a game where they should have beaten or broke the brakes off of the Bears, and they only won because of a blocked field goal. Like, the Bears were absolutely going to win that game. And I think for as explosive as their offense should be, they only scored like 17 points, the Packers. And I would say the Niners are a better team than the Bears. And it's a week by week thing. It's a scheme by scheme, situational, what's the term? How are the playbooks, the game plans, game plan versus game plan sort of thing, right? Like 1 week you could have a shitty game because you just didn't game plan well. You weren't ready for what they brought, and game plan for you. And maybe that's what happened to them against the Bears, where they thought something was going to happen, something completely different happened. But I don't know. I'm going to go with my gut and pick the Niners.
So that's very interesting because I have notoriously picked the 49ers in most games. In fact, every single game except for when the Niners just played the Chiefs the most recent time, I think I picked the 49ers to win. So the direction I'm going is, I mean, you do have a point in that the Packers should have beat the brakes off of the Bears, right? But in the same breath, the 49ers should have beaten the brakes off the Seahawks.
Yeah.
The 49ers are a better team than the Seahawks, but really it just comes down to matchups. And I think Josh Jacobs is a hell of a running back. And, Jordan Love, I think, is a great quarterback. He is prone to turning the ball over a lot. But, their matchup with the Bears have a really good defense this season. I think their secondary has been playing out of their mind. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, but I think it's pretty much factual at this point that they've been playing well.
Mm-hmm.
So none of the receivers really did that great today for the Green Bay Packers against the Bears. But now they're facing the 49ers secondary, who just allowed 110 yards to Jackson Smith and Jigba. they allowed 70 yards on 7 catches to DK Metcalf, and another 20 yards to Tyler Lockett. I feel like Green Bay is that team that can spread the ball around and make it tough for the 49ers they can't really focus on one particular player on defense. So the 49ers are going to spread out, and then you're going to have to rely on the defensive line without Nick Bosa to stop Josh Jacobs, and really rely on Fred Warner and Devondre Campbell to have to stop Josh Jacobs. I think it's going to be a tough matchup, especially on the road. The Packers are 7-3, I think, for a reason. I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers in this one. I don't know. I could be wrong. The Niners, they have their backs against the wall, I'd say, at this point in the season. They have to win, and the Niners, I am willing to acknowledge, they're the one team I'm confident that if overnight any team was just going to change, it would be the 49ers. They can flip that switch and change and then be the best team in the NFL. Yeah. Last season, they were the team that started off the hottest and then started to cool off. Maybe they just need to build up. But with the information that is currently presented to me at this time, I don't even know if Kittle's going to come back this week.
Yeah.
So I just don't see enough firepower to keep up with the Packers if the Packers are able to really spread out the 49ers defense and also get the run game going. The Niners run defense has been better over the past several weeks than it has been at the beginning of the season. But I just think that Green Bay, you can't really focus on one receiver or another, and that's a headache. Like I said, the Niners will probably intercept a pass or two in this game. I'm counting on it. Because Jordan Love, he just airs it out, throws a couple interceptions, or at least one, but he throws a bunch of touchdowns. I'm going with the Packers in this one.
Cool. It'll be an interesting game, that's for sure.
Any immediate feedback? All right, do you want to switch your pick right now?
No, you made a lot of great points, but no, I'm going to keep it.
Okay.
This is me wishing I picked the Seahawks last week.
Okay.
But I think the main point, I guess, for me is the Niners' backs are against the wall, and I think the Packers are much more beatable than the Bills. And if they don't beat the Packers, our headline on Twitter was like, is the Niners season over? To me, fuck no, it's not over. But, man, if you lose to the Packers, it's starting to feel like it with a game against the Bills coming up.
Here's the thing about the Niners tiebreakers, too, with the other teams in the division. They
got none.
They have now lost to each team in the division. And then a lot of their losses were inside the conference. So the Niners, they're going to have to, assert themselves into a playoff spot. And so that has to start now. So I just want to make it abundantly clear to everybody who's watching, I am not rooting for the Packers to win this game. I'm rooting for the 49ers. I'm still holding out hope that they can turn it around, but I'm not going to let my emotions cloud my judgment on my prediction of who I think is going to win the game.